Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today we will be painting this fall painting, a pumpkin in a grass, and I think you will like it. This is just one more addition to my autumn series painting tutorials. So if you would like to see a little bit more fall paintings, just follow up my channel, subscribe, and also check out the ones that I did previously. I did start with making my sketch, and I drew it just on a regular printing paper, and then with a graphite paper I trace it onto my watercolor paper. I do that because I don't want to smudge watercolor paper, so that is how I do my sketches. Then I'm using this artist eraser to just pick up the excess graphite from the paper, and then with the washi tape I'm making this nice white edge. I do want to leave that edge white, so that's what I'm doing. If you don't like that, you can just skip that step. Next thing I'm doing is with this large, huge mob brush, I'm just painting in the background, and I did not prevent the paper, but you know, if it's easier for you, just prevent the paper and then add the background, because if you are painting slowly, you could be left with those edges and dry ones that, you know, when they dry, they just leave those edges that you cannot remove later on. And I don't mind them, and I work pretty fast, so I don't have those edges. But if you do, just prevent your paper and it will make it easier for yourself. Just go around the pumpkin and not on it. Then I think I've mixed some green and indigo to paint in the background, and also added a little bit of olive green. The lighter parts are olive green, and as you can see, I'm not just painting anything particular, I'm just adding color here and there, doing the background. That is our grass, our meadow, so you know, just add in the colors you like for that. Also with a little bit smaller mob brush, this time I'm just doing the vertical strokes to paint in the grasses, and right now adding a little bit more splatters with just clean water, and then with a palette knife I'm doing the straight vertical lines to paint in some, again, grasses. Right now that's not very visible, but when it dries you will definitely see those lines. And if you don't have a palette knife, you can use just some old credit card. And right now with this liner brush and just the clean water, I'm adding a little bit more of the grasses. And since the paint is wet, well, you get left with those white lines. And after the paint completely dried, I moved on to painting my pumpkin. And for the pumpkin, I'm using mix of cadmium, yellow medium, and golden. And as you can see, some parts I'm leaving a little bit lighter and some a little bit darker, especially around those lines that have those slices. Well, those lines are a little bit darker, and I'm adding just a little bit more of the golden, in which I've mixed some cadmium red light to paint in those darkest lines. Also, I do want my pumpkin to be the darkest where it's sitting on the grass and the lightest on the top, so that is how I will be painting it. I'm leaving also those white lines, those white parts where the reflection from the sun is, so just also keep that in mind. You will see that on Sketch. Yes, I forgot to say that. You have available Sketch for download, and the link, well, you can find in the description of this video. But also, if you are a little bit longer on my channel, you probably already know it's my website, so go ahead to my website and download the Sketch for yourself. And you will also see those lines and those parts that I've decided to leave the lightest, and I did not paint that part. Also, I've added just a little bit of sepia in that lowest part of the pumpkin, and also some splatters in sepia, just to make it a little bit more interesting and not to make that pumpkin flat. Right now I'm just using clean water on my brush and just adding a little bit of that clean sprinkles in that clean water. And after that, while the paint is still wet, I'm moving on to painting the stem. And First, I'm using some sepia. And as you can see, I'm not painting the entire stem, but just those lines. You will also see on the sketch the lines. So just go around those lines, painting that darker part. And the part that is lighter a little bit right now, we will add some pigment there, but lighter one. Also, I've used some neutral black for that left part right here and added that little bit of neutral black here and there. And my paint, since the paper is wet, is smudging slightly and bleeding, but that's fine. That is completely fine with me. And right now, a little bit more sprinkles with that sepia, but since the paint is still wet, I'm left also with those parts that get a little bit lighter. When it dries, when that first layer dries completely, I am just using some golden mixed with just a little bit of cadmium red light to paint in the second layer. And the second layer I'm painting just in one same similar wash. And afterwards, with that same brush, I will pick up a little bit of the paint on the parts that are lighter from the previous layer. There you go. Right now, I'm just picking up a little bit of the paint, as I said, because I do want that upper part to be lighter. Adding some cadmium red light also in the lower part and around my stem. That is where the pumpkin is the darkest, and you know where the shadows are. Also a little bit more of sepia. And just when I'm doing those strokes, you can see my strokes right now, they are following the shape of the pumpkin. So don't paint those strokes straight in one straight horizontal vertical line, because you know that would not look believable. It would be look like your pumpkin is flat, but it's not, it's round. So just when you're doing those strokes, keep that in mind and do the strokes in that, you know, that circular shape, making the shape of the pumpkin also. And right now I left the paint to dry just slightly, not completely, and then added again some splatters with the clean water, and in the lower part with a little bit of sepia. When the paint this time dried completely, I left it to dry completely because right now I do not want my stem to bleed. This time I do want it to have some straighter edges, so I left it to dry completely. And right now with some sepia, again going on those lines and borders I painted earlier, and then adding a little bit of Mars brown in between, painting that part in between the lines. Also, I've picked up a little bit of golden right now, and I'm painting the part that I left a little bit lighter, that I did not paint with sepia. I've painted in with that golden. A little bit of cadmium yellow medium just to make it stand out a little bit more, and then around the stem again on my pumpkin I'm adding a little bit of cadmium red light to make that part stand out a little bit more. And also I am adding those lines where my slices are, again with a mix of golden and cadmium red light, not quite saturated, pretty light, just to make the distinction in my pumpkin and to make those lines, those borders between the slices. This is right now just a light mix of golden and cadmium red light, and with this larger brush again I'm adding some lines just to make it a little bit more textured, some sepia sprinkles again, and a little bit of cadmium yellow medium. I'm picking up right now some white gouache to paint in the highlights first on my stem, later on my pumpkin. And as you can see, I'm just using the side of my brush and painting in those lines. When the paint dried, it will be a little bit lighter. And also on the pumpkin, adding here and there some white gouache, and you could have seen I've smudged it slightly with my finger. And again, around those parts that I did leave white, I'm going with that white gouache because I don't want that hard distinction between the shadows and between the highlights and other parts of the pumpkin. So I've added a little bit of white gouache around it also. And I'm just adding it here and there where I see fit. Now I'm going around with white gouache straight out of the tube because I do want that part to stand out even more and to stay white. So I'm using a bit more creamier and not watered down white gouache. So I'm just using it straight from the tube. When it dries, this one will be left whiter than the parts that are a little bit watered down. They do get a little bit more transparent, and if you're using it straight from the tube, well, they don't get any water and do get to stay quite white. And now again, a little bit more of those sprinkles with sepia, and right now I'm using green and mixed in with just a little bit of indigo to get this dark green to paint in the grasses that are in front of my pumpkin. And just with this script liner brush, again adding quite thin lines, a little bit in a background, and also with white gouache doing some grasses, some highlighted grasses. Now I've mixed some olive green into my white gouache just to paint in also a couple of lighter grasses in green, some white sprinkles, a little bit more of the details, and you know, with that I'll be finishing off this painting and of course this video. Thank you guys a lot for watching. I do appreciate a lot all of your supports and all of your comments, so do please comment and tell me what you like, what you don't like. Give me your suggestions. I would love to read those. If you do like this video, please hit the like button, and you know, I would like that a lot. Well, if you haven't still, please subscribe to my channel. That would really mean a lot to me. And if you want to go even step further, consider joining my channel. Press that join button next to the subscribe button, listen to the offer, and then decide whether or not you want to join. And without further ado, thank you again for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. Bye!